Changsha Huayuan rooftop. On November 8, 2017, on the roof of the Changsha Huayuan International Center in Hunan Province, China, the tower stood 62 stories above the street. A small action camera had been mounted on the parapet, recording. Wu Yongming was 26 years old, a Chinese stunt performer who'd built his audience through unprotected rooftop video. Pull-ups on parapets, handstands on cornices, no harness, no spotter. He had more than 1 million followers across Weibo and the streaming app Huashan, and he'd told friends he was performing that day's stunt for a 100,000 yuan prize attached to a live-streamed contest. He climbed onto the edge, gripped the lip of the parapet, and began doing pull-ups while suspended over the drop. After several repetitions, his arms began to give out. He tried to pull himself back onto the roof and failed. He hung from the lip, looking for any purchase to regain his footing. His grip slipped. He fell from the parapet to the ground below, and the fixed camera captured the entire sequence in a single, unbroken shot. Building security found his body the following morning, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. His family told reporters in the days that followed that Wu had planned to propose to his girlfriend the day after the climb. He'd needed the prize money to fund the wedding, and to pay for medical treatment for his mother. His girlfriend, Jin, eventually broke the news publicly on Weibo on December 8th, a full month after the fall, after fans noticed his channel had gone silent. When the recovered footage surfaced, it showed that the contest organizer, a Chinese live streaming app called Huajiao, had promoted the climb and offered the prize. Wu's family argued the platform had incentivized the stunt. In 2019, the Beijing Internet Court ruled that Huajiao bore partial liability for promoting dangerous content, and ordered it to pay Wu's family 30,000 yuan, roughly $4,300 US. The recovered footage of Wu's last seconds was viewed millions of times across Chinese social media, and became the most cited case in the global debate over rooftoping content moderation. Boroka Lookout barrier. On April 26, 2022, at Boroka Lookout in Grampians National Park, Victoria, Australia, the platform sat 80 meters above the valley floor, and was bordered by warning signs and a steel safety barrier. Rosie Lumba was a 38-year-old mother visiting the lookout with her husband and her young child on a holiday afternoon. The family had taken the standard tourist path to the main viewing area, the same path thousands of visitors used every season. Just after 3 p.m., she stepped over the safety barrier to pose for a photograph on a flat slab of rock that juts beyond the rail. Witnesses said she was framing a portrait with the lake in the background. She lost her footing on the rock surface and slipped toward the edge. She fell approximately 80 meters, about 260 feet, onto the boulders below. Her husband called emergency services from the lookout. It took rescuers about 6 hours to descend the cliff face and recover her body, working through the late afternoon and into the evening. Parks Victoria later confirmed that Lumba had crossed the safety barrier into a marked no-access zone, and that the agency had previously placed warning signs at the lookout after multiple near-miss incidents at the same rock. Victoria Police treated the death as a non-suspicious accidental fall and laid no charges. Parks Victoria announced a review of barrier placement at the lookout. Cliffs of Moher Trinity student. On January 4, 2019, at the Cliffs of Moher in County Clare on Ireland's west coast, the cliffs rose about 600 feet straight out of the Atlantic. The day was unusually clear, with afternoon sun on the southern face. Anand Goel was a 26-year-old marketing and design master's student at Trinity College, Dublin. Originally from Delhi, he'd arrived at Trinity in September of the previous year. He'd taken a bus tour to the cliffs that morning and had walked south from the visitor center toward O'Brien's Tower. He sat on the grass close to the cliff edge, with the Atlantic behind him and the sun on his face. A witness, Nadine Stokel, was walking the path above and saw him taking photographs of himself with the sea in the background. She watched him take, as she later testified, lots of selfies in the same position for several minutes, leaning back again and again to frame the shot. He shifted his weight backward to adjust the angle one more time and went over the edge. He fell roughly 600 feet into the sea below. Irish Coast Guard Helicopter Rescue 115 was launched from Shannon, and his body was recovered from the water after a multi-hour search. At the inquest in Ennis the following July, Coroner Isabel O'Day told the court, "It is quite clear that Mr. Goel was taking selfies in what proved to be a very dangerous place. There has been no evidence that there was any intention by him to do self-harm." A verdict of accidental death was returned. Trinity College Dublin paid tribute to Goel in a public statement, and his family arranged for his repatriation to Delhi. Watkins Cessna cockpit. Just after midnight on May 31, 2014, at Front Range Airport in Watkins, Colorado, east of Denver, a two-seat Cessna 150 had taken off into clear night air over the open prairie. The pilot was Amritpal Singh, a 29-year-old private pilot with an instrument rating, and he had a single passenger on board. A GoPro action camera was mounted in the cockpit. About 4 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft entered a steep left turn and lost altitude rapidly. The Cessna struck the ground in a flat prairie field, roughly a mile from the runway. Both occupants were killed on impact, and first responders from the Adams County Sheriff's Office pronounced them dead at the scene. In the weeks that followed, the NTSB recovered the GoPro from the wreckage. The camera held 7 video files from earlier flights. Investigators found that in those earlier flights, Singh had repeatedly taken selfies and used the flash of his cell phone at low altitude. The flash, fired in a dark cockpit, would have caused brief but disabling spatial disorientation. In the probable cause report issued the following February, the NTSB concluded it was likely that Singh had been taking selfies during the final flight as well. The agency issued a finding of pilot disorientation resulting from cell phone use during low-altitude maneuvering, and cited the case publicly as a benchmark for distracted flying. The crash became the most cited example of selfie-related distraction in aviation, and is now taught in private pilot ground school as a cautionary case. Pineapple Mountain Waterfall. On the morning of Saturday, July 10, 2021, on the Singdai Stream Trail at Hapok Lai in Hong Kong's New Territories, a trail follows a series of falls and pools, known locally as Pineapple Mountain. Sophia Chung was a 32-year-old Hong Kong influencer with more than 8,000 Instagram followers. Her feed featured scenic edge poses across Hong Kong's outlying ranges, the kind of photographs that read as adventure but required standing somewhere her followers couldn't safely follow. That morning, she had hiked in with a group of friends, setting off around 11 a.m. She climbed onto the lip of a waterfall above a deep plunge pool to frame a self-portrait. She slipped on the wet rock. She fell roughly 5 meters, about 16 feet, into the plunge pool below, and struck her head on the way down. Her hiking companions called emergency services. The Hong Kong Government Flying Service airlifted her to Pamela Yude Nether Seoul Eastern Hospital in Chai Wan, where she was pronounced dead. Hong Kong police treated the fall as accidental, and Chung's Instagram archive showed a recurring pattern of unprotected cliff edge and waterfall poses across multiple New Territories hikes. The case prompted Hong Kong outdoor groups and the South China Morning Post editorial board to call for better signage at popular social media hiking spots. No policy change followed. Flatiron Summit Superstition. Just after midnight on January 26, 2022, on the summit of Flatiron in Lost Dutchman State Park in the Superstition Mountains east of Apache Junction, Arizona, the summit sat at roughly 4,800 feet, the city lights of the Phoenix Valley visible to the west. Richard Jacobson was a 21-year-old hiker from California. He and a friend had made the climb that afternoon, summited late, and decided to camp overnight on the ridge. Around 12:45 a.m., he walked toward the edge to take a photograph of himself with the city skyline in the background. He lost his footing on loose scree at the edge of the rim. He slipped over the edge and fell between 400 and 700 feet to the canyon floor below. His friend dialed 911. Sergeant Doug Peeble of the Pinal County Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue led the recovery, and the team located Jacobson's body at first light. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The Sheriff's Office found no signs of foul play and no evidence of drug or alcohol use. Sergeant Peeble described the fall publicly as just a very tragic accident. The death was ruled accidental, and Lost Dutchman State Park reviewed signage at the summit but did not add a barrier. Hidalgo Final Spike train. On the morning of June 4, 2024, along a public road crossing the rail line in Hidalgo, Mexico, a vintage steam locomotive was approaching the crossing at speed. The engine was part of Canadian Pacific Kansas City's Final Spike steam tour, a traveling celebration of the railroad's recent merger. Dulce Alondra Garcia Hernandez was a 29-year-old Mexican woman who had brought her young son to watch the train pass. They had been waiting at the railside with a crowd of other onlookers, the kind of crowd a vintage steam tour reliably draws. As the locomotive bore down on the crossing, she stepped out from the crowd toward the track. She pushed her son back into the crowd, raised her phone, and turned her back to the locomotive to frame a selfie with the engine behind her. The locomotive struck her at full speed. She was killed instantly. The entire sequence was captured on cell phone video by other onlookers, who can be heard screaming. Bystanders rushed forward, but emergency response was already underway, and first responders pronounced her dead at the scene. Mexican authorities later confirmed her identity and noted that she had pushed her child clear before raising her phone. CPKC issued a statement of condolence and confirmed the train had been operating on the designated route. No criminal charges were filed against the locomotive crew. Mexican state authorities reviewed crossing safety along the Final Spike route, but did not announce structural changes. Video of the strike circulated widely on Mexican social media and prompted CPKC to add prominent safety warnings to the remainder of the tour. Taft Point Yosemite couple. On the afternoon of October 24, 2018, at Taft Point in Yosemite National Park, California, the overlook sat more than 7,500 feet above sea level. It looks across at El Capitan and ends in a granite shelf that drops roughly 800 feet straight down without a guardrail. Vishnu Viswanath was 29, and his wife Meenakshi Murthy was 30. The couple were from India, lived in Northern California, and ran a travel blog account they called Holidays and Happily Ever Afters. Murthy had described herself online as an adrenaline junkie. In the year before the trip, she had posted from edge-of-cliff locations across 3 continents. They reached the overlook in the afternoon, set a tripod with a self-timer, and began composing a self-portrait. While framing the shot, they moved past the unmarked edge of the granite shelf. Both fell roughly 800 feet to the rocks below. Both were killed on impact. Other park visitors noticed the unattended tripod on the overlook and reported it to park rangers. Yosemite Search and Rescue located the bodies the next morning, October 25th. In the days that followed, Yosemite rangers recovered the camera and tripod, and Murthy's brother, Srinivas, told reporters the couple had been taking a photograph when they went over the edge. He also revealed that 7 months earlier, his sister had posted to Instagram a single line about edge photography. Is our life just worth one photo? Weeks later, the Stanislaus County Sheriff's Department reported that both Viswanath and Murthy had measurable blood alcohol levels at the time of death, and the autopsy concluded alcohol intoxication had been a contributing factor. The deaths were ruled accidental falls with alcohol intoxication contributing. No criminal charges were filed, and Yosemite National Park did not add a barrier at Taft Point. Murthy's earlier Instagram caption, the question she had posted into the void 7 months before her death, was reprinted by NPR, The Washington Post, and dozens of other outlets. It became one of the most cited lines in the global selfie safety conversation. Kumbhe Waterfall, Reels Fall. On the afternoon of July 16, 2024, at Kumbhe Waterfall in the Raigad district of Maharashtra, India, about 80 miles south of Mumbai, monsoon rains had swollen the falls and made the surrounding rock slick. Anvi Kamdar was a 27-year-old chartered accountant who had trained at Deloitte and built a travel and finance Instagram following of more than 278,000 under the handle The Glocal Journal. She had hiked in that afternoon with 7 friends. She moved on to the wet rock above the falls to shoot a vertical reel for the account. She slipped on the wet surface. She fell into a 300-foot gorge below. She survived the initial fall, wedged on a ledge inside the gorge, and steady rain hampered the rescue. A team from Mangawan Taluka took about 6 hours to extract her from the cliff face, and she was transported to Mangawan Taluka Government Hospital, where she died the following day from her injuries. Local police and friends offered conflicting accounts about whether Kamdar was filming reels at the moment of the slip, though authorities and most national outlets reported reels filming was underway. The death was ruled accidental, and Maharashtra tourism authorities placed temporary warning signage at Kumbhe Waterfall for the remainder of the monsoon season. If this is the kind of content you'd like more of, subscribe, and drop ideas for the next one in the comments.